Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking one of the most famous historical underdog narratives of literally all time. From shepherd to king, the story of David. We're setting the stage for an epic, chronological hero's journey. But we're going to go way beyond the familiar summary you might have heard. We're looking at the real mechanics of this story. An overlooked young kid, a massive giant, and the incredibly high-stakes, ruthless battle for an entire kingdom. Let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. How exactly does an overlooked kid, armed with nothing but a slingshot, actually become the ruler of a nation? To really grasp that, we have to recognize that this whole story kicks off during a massive leadership crisis. Israel's current ruler, King Saul, had essentially gone rogue. He completely stopped listening to God's direction. And because this fragile, emerging nation desperately needed a king with genuine integrity, someone who would follow wholeheartedly, God prompts the prophet Samuel to go on a highly secretive search. His target? The royal house of a guy named Jesse, to find a brand new, totally unexpected king. Now, when Samuel shows up, Jesse naturally assumes this is all about finding the most physically imposing candidate, right? So he parades his 7 oldest, strongest sons in front of the prophet. He starts with Eliab. And Eliab is tall, he's incredibly handsome, heavily muscled, basically the absolute picture of what ancient societies universally thought a king and military commander was supposed to look like. But God definitively says no to Eliab. Then comes the second son, then the third, until all 7 have been presented. And remarkably, God says no to all 7 of them. Why? Well, because his divine criteria operated on a completely different standard for leadership.
You're looking at the outside of this man. I look on the inside. God explicitly tells Samuel this, and it's absolutely crucial. It's a profound shift, really, a massive contrast between humanity's obsession with outward appearance, the resume, the height, the physical presence, and God's exclusive focus on the heart. Since none of these impressive older brothers fit the bill, a very confused Samuel asks if there are any others. And that prompts Jesse to send for his youngest son, a kid named David, who literally hadn't even been invited to the gathering. He was just out in the fields working a solitary, deeply unglamorous job as a shepherd. So when David finally arrives from the pastures, Samuel does something highly symbolic. He pours special temple olive oil over David's head. This is an ancient act called anointing, which basically means being explicitly set apart or chosen for something really special. By doing this right in front of his family, Samuel was signaling that God had chosen this young, unassuming boy to eventually be king, to follow him with fierce loyalty, and to bring a long-awaited blessing to the entire world. But here's the crazy part. David doesn't get the crown that day. He gets a secret destiny, and then he goes right back to his sheep. Right, so fast forward a few years and the geopolitical tension just rapidly accelerates. Israel finds itself under severe attack by the Philistines. And these guys brought an incredibly effective instrument of psychological terror to the front line. A terrifying, fiercely boastful giant named Goliath. Goliath uses this standard ancient warfare tactic, demanding a one-on-one champion fight. But the stakes, they were unimaginable. It was a terrifying winner-takes-all battle for freedom, where the losing champion's entire nation would become permanent slaves. And man, this psychological warfare worked flawlessly. King Saul and all the seasoned Israelite soldiers were just absolutely paralyzed with terror. Now, while his older, combat-trained brothers had marched off to the standoff, young David wasn't even in the military. He was literally just running an errand, dropping off food rations at the camp. But when he gets there and actually hears Goliath's blasphemous threats, David possesses this incredible clarity that the professional soldiers completely lacked. He bravely volunteers to fight. King Saul frantically tries to put his own heavy bronze sword and royal armor on David, but it's way too big. It just restricts his movement. Recognizing the total folly of trying to be someone else, David rejects the clunky armor. Instead, he sticks to what he knows. He grabs his trusty slingshot, walks out onto the battlefield, and picks up exactly 5 smooth stones. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate underdog matchup. Seriously, it's a perfect study in asymmetric warfare. On one side of the battlefield, you have Goliath, representing overwhelming brute force, giant size, heavily plated armor, and a massive spear. On the other side, you have David, kid size, absolutely zero armor, armed only with a slingshot primarily used to scare off scavengers. By all conventional metrics, it looks like a total suicide mission. But David brings something Goliath couldn't calculate: agility, distance, and supreme confidence. You see, David knew God had already helped him protect his sheep by fighting off a lion and a bear with his bare hands.
So Goliath takes one look at this unarmored teenager, feels deeply insulted, mocks him, and actually threatens to feed him to the birds. But David doesn't flinch, not even a little. He delivers an absolute mic drop response. He shouts back, "You come at me with your big spear and strong armor, but I come with the power of my big, strong God." Wow. David instantly shifts the perspective from the physical to the cosmic. He makes it crystal clear right then and there that he is fighting God's battle. This wasn't about physical strength or military technology, it was a pure demonstration of divine authority. The actual showdown is a total masterclass in swift, decisive execution. First, David's slinging a stone. He doesn't wait around, he runs directly at the battle line. Second, that single stone hits Goliath right between the eyes, his only exposed vulnerable point. And third, the giant falls face first, and just like that, Israel is miraculously saved. It's a stunning outcome, because God completely bypassed the traditional power structures. He didn't use the big strong King Saul, or the standing army, or Jesse's trained warriors. He used a kid who completely and unconditionally trusted him to do something absolutely amazing. But did David know King Saul wanted to hurt him? We've got to pivot here, from this incredible victorious high to a highly anxious, dangerous turning point. See, after defeating Goliath, David gets rapidly promoted. He becomes this wildly popular, undefeated army leader. The public absolutely adores him. But King Saul, the guy with the crown but zero internal security, he becomes consumed with this deeply bitter, dangerous jealousy. Saul's fragile ego just couldn't handle David's skyrocketing popularity. The danger escalates unbelievably fast. Saul's jealousy doesn't just stay in his head, it turns violently physical. During one of his paranoid rages, Saul actually hurls a spear directly at David, narrowly missing him. It becomes painfully clear that sticking around is a literal death sentence. But in a stunning, ironic twist, Saul's own son, Jonathan, the presumed heir to the throne, acts as David's loyal inside man. Jonathan recognizes God's calling on his best friend and urgently warns David to flee, knowing the army would blindly obey the king's murderous orders. This forces David into a heartbreaking reality. He has to say a sad goodbye to Jonathan, leave everything behind, and live entirely on the run. He goes from celebrated national hero to a desperate fugitive, hiding in harsh desert caves. And this wasn't just a quick weekend getaway. This lasted for 8 agonizing years. Let the profound weight of that sink in for a second. For almost a decade, the anointed king of Israel had to survive as an outlaw, constantly looking over his shoulder, enduring the crucible of leadership while waiting for God's next instructions. Now, while God did meticulously keep David safe in the desert, tragedy eventually strikes the nation in a horrific way. A devastating battle erupts once again against their old enemies, the Philistines. The Israelite lines collapse, and with a really heavy, sobering heart, we learn that many died, including not only King Saul, but also David's beloved best friend, Jonathan. It was a profoundly sad day that instantly wiped out the royal family line and forever altered the entire political and emotional landscape of Israel. Okay, let's move to and see how this builds into an unbelievable strategic life story. Just think about this wild trajectory for a moment. It's staggering. He starts as an entirely overlooked shepherd boy, anointed in secret. Then he brilliantly leverages his unique skills to become a giant-slaying army leader. Then comes the massive drop. 8 grueling years hiding in the desert as a hunted fugitive. But finally, in the aftermath of that national tragedy, the people remember David's faithfulness and God's anointing. They unite, and he is officially chosen to take the throne as Israel's new king. So that brings us to the end of our explainer, but I really want to leave you with a provocative thought here. When we look at David's incredible journey from the pasture to the throne, it kind of forces us to hold a mirror up to our own lives. What massive giants or seemingly insurmountable obstacles could you overcome if you stopped relying on conventional armor, leaned into your unique strengths, and fully trusted in something entirely greater than yourself? It's a powerful, challenging question to carry with you today. Thank you so much for joining me on this, and I'll catch you next time.